Hey, how's it going? Preston here. This is part 2 of the Demonology Guide. If you missed part 1, go ahead and check my channel and find it. In that video, I covered the basic rotation abilities for Demonology, touched on how Doom works. Um, in this video, we'll be talking about the talents for Demonology, as well as legendaries, and a couple different builds, and a bit more on how to maximize yourself as a Demonology Warlock. Alright, so let's get started. First of all, this is a terrible talent build. I just had this for the other video so I wouldn't get unnecessary procs and things like that. The current build is this. This is the... oh, there we go. This is the current build for single target damage. So for single target, you're going to want to pick Shadowy Inspiration. I'll talk about each talent. Okay, so for single target, you want to go Shadow Inspiration every time. Shadow Flame sucks. Its damage is bad. It's just for whatever reason, it's just not a well-rounded talent. I think Blizzard intended this to be sort of a movement-based talent. But really, Demonology has a lot of movement already, with things like Life Tap, and Demon Wrath, and things like that. So it's really not that useful. But anyway, Demonic Calling. So it's going to be between Shadow Inspiration and Demonic Calling. Demonic Calling is very strong. It does have its place. You can use Demonic Calling in single target, but its main strength is in AoE. Because it basically makes Dreadstalkers worth casting in AoE. Typically you don't really cast called Dreadstalkers in AoE. It's more useful to use Hand to Gul'dan. So in AoE scenarios, it's pretty good. But yeah, in single target, you're going to use Shadowy Inspiration. But you cast a lot of demonic empowerments, so you're going to get a lot of instant Shadow Bolts, obviously. Now, on the level 30 tier, you're going to be using Improved Dreadstalkers for single target. So we'll go into AoE next, but first we're just going to talk about single target. So single target is Improved Dreadstalkers. You're never going to take Implosion. This is a multi-target talent. This is just a talent that's good for questing and not much else. Demonic Circle in most scenarios for level 45's tier. Mythic Pluses, you can use Shadow Fury if you really need extra stuns. Mortal Coil is not really used ever, except for maybe questing. Level 60, Hand of Doom is a multi-target talent. So it's useful in that scenario. It's best paired with Impending Doom. So Impending Doom makes your Doom tick faster and give you imps when it ticks. Hand of Doom makes Hand to Gul'dan apply Doom to everything. So, yeah, pretty good pair there. But for single target, you're going to want to use Power Trip. Soul Harvest may look appealing, but it's actually not that good, especially when compared to Power Trip. Power Trip is going to give you a ton of Soul Shards generation, and it also is a core part of the build. It pairs up fantastically with Shadowy Inspiration. And I'll show you why in a bit. For level 75 tier, this is all utility and defensives. Burning Rush in most scenarios, since you can get out of the fire by lighting yourself on fire. Dark Pact is a nice little 1-minute cooldown. Defensive, if you need something like that. It's particularly strong for Demonology because it goes off of your minions' health, which you are going to be buffing with Demonic Empowerment. So it's much stronger than it is for, say, Affliction or Destruction. Demon Skin, it's like having Pride As without having to wear Pride As. It's very good as well. Nice passive. The level 90 tier, you have no options here. You have to go Service. The only other option is Synergy. Synergy is decent in a pure AoE scenario and nothing else. Supremacy is absolute garbage. You're never going to use it. The only time you would ever use Supremacy is if you have Sephuz and no other Legendary, because you have no Interrupt as Demonology unless you use Supremacy, because you can't use Fell Hunter because the damage is too low. You can use Supremacy if you have Sephuz. So this talent, if you have Sephuz, you don't have anything better, go for Supremacy, I guess, so you can interrupt things and proc it when you Doomguard. Ugh. For the level 100 tier, you have to go Soul Conduit. The other two talents are just way too... they're just nowhere near as strong as Soul Conduit. Soul Conduit gives you 20% more Soul Shards, which means you get more Imps. All your damage comes from Imps. It's just way too good to pass up. Even in an AoE scenario, because more minions means more Demon Wraths, which means more Shards, which means more Imps, which means more refunds. It's sort of this endless cycle for Soul Conduit. Demon Bolt just doesn't do enough damage to compete. Maybe if somehow Soul Conduit was in a different tier, it'd be fun to use Demon Bolt, but we don't live in that world. Dark Glare is really fun and cool, but just doesn't do the damage that it could. You know, typically you would think, oh, here we go. It attacks everything that has Doom, so I'll pick Hand of Doom, Impending Doom, and this, and it's really cool. Yeah, but it just doesn't do enough damage to warrant it, so even in AoE, you're going to want to use Soul Conduit. But yeah, we're going to talk about the single target rotation with the current build, and the current tier set. So the current tier set is Shadow Bolt resets your Called Dreadstalkers, and whenever you get Called Dreadstalkers, cast Called Dreadstalkers, you get 10% haste for 5 seconds. So the tier set is very good. You don't need to run 4 set, 2 set. The 2 set from the other tier is honestly not that good, so don't worry about it. Something to note with the 4 set is that that haste buff lets you snapshot your Doom, so you might want to keep an eye on that, or just after you cast Call Dreadstalkers, that's when you want to refresh your Doom. All right, so enough babbling about. Let's get into the rotation. So when running this build with Shadowy Inspiration and Power Trip, you will never hardcast Shadow Bolt like this. That is never going to happen. That is not how you play this build. So this build is going to be you cast Empowerment and then you Shadow Bolt. Like that every time. This gives you more movement and it's just more damage and more Soul Shards. Because Demonic Empowerment casts faster than in Shadow Bolt does. So right away, it's faster to do that. And also, whenever you cast Empowerment, you have a 65% chance to generate a Soul Shard. And on top of that, your new trait turns turns Demonic Empowerment into a miniature kill command, causing each one of your minions to do an additional attack on the target. So the basic rotation here is to buff and Shadow Bolt. So you're going to be buff, Shadow Bolt, summoning, buffing, Shadow Bolting, and then casting more Hand of Gul'dan's. Always instant cast Shadow Bolt. Still refresh Doom all the time. Now, I have a minion counter, and you see whenever I get to 13 minions, I will not cast Shadow Bolt anymore. So once you get to 13 or more minions, you will no longer cast Shadow Bolt anymore. You will instead spam Empowerment. So once you get to 13 or more minions, you will just start casting Demonic Empowerment as your filler instead of Shadow Bolt. So let's see if I can get to 13 minions here. Just come on, get some lucky procs. Oh, so close. Oh, there we go. So we'll just empower. We'll pretend we're at 13 minions right now. You'll just be spamming it like that, and that'll generate you shards, and then you can keep summoning. But yeah, so that's the core rotation for this build is going to be Empower, then Shadow Bolt, keep Doom up all the time, Dreadstalkers on cooldown, dump with Hand of Gul'dan. Once you reach 13 or more minions, you will be spamming Demonic Empowerment, and don't even use Shadow Bolt with the instant proc. So that's the basics for this build. Now, we're going to talk about cooldowns and how to line up cooldowns and things like that. I didn't touch Thalcal's consumption in my early video because even though it is your artifact ability, using this ability correctly, I just felt like it wasn't worth putting in a beginner's guide. So the thing with this is it drains 8% life from each of your minions and unleashes it as a bolt at the target. You can't. It has a 45-second cooldown. But you can't. It's not worth hitting unless you have at least 10 minions out. And like it's better. It'd be better if those weren't all imps, right? So it's based off of minion HP. So the amount of minions is going to be better. But more importantly than that, the bigger minions you have, the better. So your cooldowns are going to be Grimoire, Felguard, that's your talent, and then Doomguard or Infernal. Infernal in massive AoE scenarios, but most of the time you're just going to be using a Doomguard. You need to have like 5 or more targets to use an Infernal. It's only worth it in that kind of scenario. You think of like massive AoE scenarios. So anyway, so using our cooldowns, our opener is precast, Dreadstalker, send our pet in, put Doom up, use our instant, Shadow Bolt, summon our 2 big cooldowns, buff them right away, Shadow Bolt, Hand of Gul'dan, refresh Doom. So we're going to actually wait until we have more than 10 minions, and we're keeping an eye on our Doomguard, because that's our most important one. And we're going to try and get as many minions out, so we're at 19 minions, and then I push that button, and then it's going to hit for the most damage possible. So like I saw it hit 19 minions, like that's going to be, that's probably the most minions I'm going to have. And let's see what did it hit for? It hit for 6.9 million damage, which is pretty good. I've seen it hit harder, but lining up those is kind of the core of playing this spec well, is being able to line up really good Thalcal's consumptions by summoning a lot of minions. So you're going to need a lot of add-ons or weak auras to play the spec correctly. I recommend Doom Shards. You're going to need weak auras. There's a couple weak auras you can grab, like the minion tracker and things like that. And I'll see if I can put some links in the description on where you can grab that kind of stuff. So that's how you do that. Now let's talk about Doom a little bit. I touched on this in the earlier video, but I want to talk about how you can really min-max Doom. So Doom can be snapshotted with haste. You can actually is a dot with 1 tick. Now, if you have Lust or a haste buff and you refresh Doom, so Doom, it says, deals shadow damage after 14.8 seconds. And it'll actually update in the tooltip. So if I pop here, I pop my my Charm of the Rising Tide, and I wait till I have the full haste, instead of it being 14 seconds, it's 13 seconds. So I actually shaved off a full second off of that, just by using it with my trinket. And you'd think, okay, well now the haste is gone. That actually didn't happen. It snapshotted it. So keep that in mind when you're using Doom, is that if you have a massive haste buff like Bloodlust or Drums or whatever, or like your trinket procs or things like that, that's going to be one when you want to refresh your Doom. That's going to be one when you want to put new Dooms out, because they're just going to tick that much faster. Shaving off, in some cases like 3 to 4 seconds off of the you can think of it almost like a cast time, you know what I mean? Because it's the same damage either way, right? It's just, when does that damage happen? So that's something I wanted to touch on. I said I would look at Legendaries in this video, although I might save it for another video. No, we'll talk about them quickly. Your 2 best in slots are right here. The helmet and shoulders, by far. but by far, even above the shoulders, in my opinion, is Wakener's Loyalty. Wakener's Loyalty, every time you spend a Soul Shard, it increases the damage of your next Alkel's consumption by 3%. There's no actual... Like, you can just sit here and spam summon your minion, you know, and generate stacks of this. Like, on Kill Jaden and Transition and there's nothing going on, you can literally just spam summon your minion and start building up to a really powerful nuke. But, you know, when you're casting Handed Gul'dan, when you're casting Called Dreadstalkers, you know, Grimoire, Felguard, Doomguard, those all cost Soul Shards. They all contribute to this in one way or another, generating stacks. There's no duration here. It lasts until your next cast. So you can leave that up for days. It doesn't matter until you can cast that spell or die. Or I guess right, click it off, but you know. Now the reason this is so good is because, like you said, like I showed you, it can hit really hard. So if you get it at 50 stacks, which is the maximum, it's 3% per stack, so it maxes out on plus 150% damage. You know, lining those up is going to be really good. Recruitment Ritual is really powerful because it refunds a Soul Shard, and it just means you're getting more minions out. It's increasing your Soul Shard generation by a good bit. So it's really strong in that scenario. The third best would be Wilfred's Sigil. That one, I personally prefer it over Recruitment Ritual, just personal preference, because it allows me to... So what that one does is every time you summon a Wild Imp or a Dreadstalker, the cooldown on your Summon Doomguard or Infernal is reduced by 2 seconds per minion. So you know, it's a 3-minute cooldown. I've gotten Doomguard or Infernal down to be like less than a minute cooldown. So I can actually line it up almost every time I have consumption up. I can have a Doomguard with it, which just makes it hit so hard. So that's actually what I'm running right now. Aside from that, I mean, the ones you want to avoid are pretty much the same as every class. You don't want Sefus. You don't really want Pride-Az. You don't really want, you know, like, Force... Norganon's Foresight. You don't want that. Kha'Zix's Final Curse is very useful in multi-target scenarios. But this is the single-target build. You want that stuff. Cinderace's Spite's really good on really short fights. Master Harvester, the proc chance is really low on this legendary, so I personally don't like it. But I mean, something you'd have to sim. And something I'll say about the legendaries is that you want to sim your character as often as you can, because above anything else, your stat priority for Demonology, haste is weighed excessively high. Like 3 to 4 times more valuable than any other stat is haste. And the reason is because Demonic Empowerment increases your demon's haste by 58%, and your demons have your haste, and demons don't give a crap about global cooldown. They'll just go to town. And I mean, it's and Doom as well, because you can snapshot, you know, with it. Like, haste is just so valuable for a Demonology Warlock that with legendaries, you know, keeping tier is also super valuable. So keep your tier, keep your haste as high as possible, and then use, like, preferably the helmet with something else, like, as best you can. But anyway, this video is kind of dragged on, so I might do some more guides if it's something that you guys want. But yeah, this was part 2. I might have a third part upcoming. Hopefully get some videos where I do some live dungeons and stuff like that. But anyway, see you later.